This is Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org.
Welcome to the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by Lean On Me USA. I'm Elmo Golden.
I'm Oswald Newbold.
Today we're here with Dr. Shearns and also John Eddings. We're coming to you from Everglades Correctional Institution, and we're still talking about one of our favorite programs, the incentivized program. We're bringing you a little more insight of the Correctional Transition Program, better known as CTP, with our very own Dr. Shearns, also affectionately known as Doc. Doc, tell us how this all began.
How we started CTP, or Corrections Transition Program, back in 1996. I was doing some programs for the men's institution down at the South Florida Reception Center. Mrs. Marta Villacorta was chairman, or rather, warden, there at the time. And she suddenly realized in her head that years ago we had put in 25 years mandatory to life for men who were receiving the sentence of life. Instead of just life, they got the mandatory 25. The mandatory was coming up soon, 1997, and they quite weren't sure what was going to be happening. So she called me and asked me, could I please work a program up for these long-term offenders? They've been in prison a long time, and it's going to take some orientation to get them back into the community and succeed in community, stay in community. And at first I said, no. I don't think I want to deal with lifers, no. Because in order to be a lifer, I know what the crime was. So I said, no. She says, no, don't answer me so quickly. She said, I want you to meet someone before you make your decision. And so she called in one of her inmates by the name of Eddie Davis and said, I want you to talk with him. So Eddie came up and we sat in her conference room and we must have talked, I think, 3 hours. And I kept saying, no, Eddie, I don't think, I'm afraid of you. I said to him, I'm afraid of you. Look what you've done murder, I'm afraid of you. So he says, but why? I said, listen, you can overcome me, you could hit me over the head and I'm gone and you are escaping and all of this will be my fault. No, I don't think so. And he remarked and looked at me and said, well, remember we were in a conference room and there were windows. And so he looked and said, look out that window. Do you see that street out there, that road out there? And I said, of course I see the road out there. He said, you can take me out, put me on that road, and leave me and tell me to go. And he said, what would I do? I said, you would run. He said, no, I wouldn't. He said, I would run, turn around and run right back in here again. I said, why would you do that, Eddie? He said, because I don't know where to go. I've been in prison, I don't know what to do. I don't know where I would even sleep tonight. No, I would turn around and I'd come back in here. So don't ever worry about any one of us escaping because we won't do that. That convinced me. So I said, fine. I went to Mrs. Villacorta and I said, fine, we'll do this together and we'll work up a program for long-term offenders, men who have been in prison for 25 years or more. And we'll work just to get them accustomed to society again, socialize them. I call them prisonized. They've been in prison so long, they have to abide by the rules of the institution. And when you do by rules of institution and you do it for 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 years, that's what you're doing. You become in my book, you become prisonized. In other words, it's socialized to the prison. Now we have to get them to turn around and say, this isn't going to work in society. It's not going to work. You can't punch somebody in the nose if you're standing in Publix and somebody walks up in front of you. If you're in the chow line here and someone comes up in front of you, you could punch them in the nose. You can't do that outside. It's perfectly acceptable in here, but it's not acceptable out in community. And so we have to re-socialize them. So I call them de-prisonization. That's one of the basic is to get them to say, okay, We want to live out in the community. It's something that most people don't realize. They have done a very serious crime. Nobody realizes that more than they do. They know, they remember that every day of their life and so forth. But they've been in prison for so long, they don't know what society holds out for them out there, have no idea. And so we want to now re-socialize them, so to speak, or de-prisonize them, whichever word you want to use. And that's one of the purposes, the purpose of our program, is to help them help themselves. We can give them all the tools that we can find available for them, all the tools we can. If they don't take advantage of the tools, it's not going to work. So happens that when we started the program, we had a difficult time, and I said to Mrs. Villacorta, how will we do this? And she said, excuse me, I'll let you decide. I says, no, I don't want to decide, because anyone who knows anything about counseling, if you choose your own client, you know, you're cheating here. So I said, I don't want to choose my client. I want you to tell me who the men that you want in the program. She sent word out to all the institutions and said, we have a program going for long-term offenders that have to be in 25 years or more. So if you have anyone, you can send them to us. And she got quite a few. But we ended up with, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 14 men was what we started with. Eddie being one of them. He was being the first one in the program. And so we took those men that first, they were very difficult, because they're looking around and they're saying, who are you? What are you doing in here? What are you, Miss Goody Two-Shoes? That's what they were referring me to, and so forth. And I had a very difficult time convincing them that I had no other interest except for them. One of the other issues of this program, which would make it very unique, is that every single person involved in here is a volunteer. No one gets paid. We get volunteers from the community, we get volunteers from the students, from FIU, everybody in here, and everybody that is associated with us is a volunteer. I think it's very important to state that, because it's a part of our success of our program.
I want to ask you, kind of revisit that conversation between you and Martha Villacorta. How did she contact you?
Oh, well, I was doing a class down at South Florida Reception Center at the time.
Okay.
I also worked with Marta for many years before that in the women's prison. And we knew each other well. And she also went to Florida International University. I am now a retired professor of criminal justice from Florida International University. But I still do an adjunct class for them, because I still bring students in the department from Department of Psychology, this as an adjunct professor currently. This is what I do. So when I was in my classes, one of the things that I always did was take my classes on tours, and they always toured the prisons, because that's my area. My area is counseling. And so I wanted to do that. And so Mrs. Villacorta said, well, why don't you do a class with these women? So, okay, so that's how I started. I started doing classes for the women's prison, and I did that for about 15 years. And whatever. She was then moved from, from Broward CI, which was the women's prison at the time, down to South Florida Reception Center. And then she called me, and I said, I can't do both. I cannot do the women and the men. She said, the men need you more. And so I listened to her, and I ended up going down there and starting a class down there. And then in the middle of all of this, after maybe about a year or two there, that's when this came up about the 25-year mandatory is going to be coming up. We don't know what to do in the Department of Corrections, whether we're going to release them at 25 years, because their sentence was 25 years to life. So are we going to release them in 25 years, or what are we going to do with them? I don't want these men to go out there after all this time without some education, without some preparation to help them succeed out there, to help them because, and that's when I said that I certainly can understand that. These men don't know what a cell phone is. They never used it. One of my men came back and said, I was crossing the street. It took me 5 red lights before I had enough courage to cross the street, because he wasn't used to crossing a street after 30 years and so forth. So there are many, many different things that we never even think about, and they can't do because they've been away from society so long. So our program helps them get readjusted. We bring in community speakers from the community so that the community speakers can tell them how they made it in life. And then it helps our men say, gee whiz, I could have done that. I don't know why I didn't do that. Instead, I chose that life. And it helps them. It really helps them. Community speakers love it. After they speak to our men, they come to me and say, can I come back again? Can I come back again? They do their own planning because they have to have a plan. I said, if you want to go to Timbuktu, you got to have a road plan. And if you don't have a road plan, you won't know how to get there. And if you get there, you won't know that you got there because, in fact, you didn't have a road plan. That's what we do. We do a parole plan. And what they're going to be doing in their short term, maybe in the next year or 2 or 3, is their short term. Or what are they going to do 5 years from now, 6 years from now? So they have to have some kind of a program which helps them a great deal.
How long have you been doing this kind of work?
Oh, my goodness. That's not a good thing to ask a lady. But it's a long time. It's a long time. It really, very long. Well, this program is 26, I'm going on 27 years. I did the women's prison for 15, 16 years. I did, And of course, I've been at FIU, and I'm retired. That should tell you something. So I've been doing it a long time.
Then that would explain why the program is called the Dr. Regina B. Shearns Program.
Well, let me tell you how that came about. Most people call it the FIU program or the LIPUS program. After we started the program, and maybe about 4 or 5 years after that, we were moved out here to Everglades, and the Parole Commission heard about it. So the whole commission then came to visit us and whatever else. And after about a year or 2, they came to me and said, if you're going to be retiring from FIU, can you still call it the FIU program? And I said, quite frankly, I don't know about that. I would have to ask the president. And they said, we don't recommend that. We recommend that you call it after yourself and legally do it. So it was through the Parole Commission that I had to change it to the Dr. Regina B. Shearns Program because I couldn't legally keep calling it the FIU program. That's how it came across with that name.
So who is the young man we have next to you?
My young man next to me is John Eddings. He is an alumni of the program. And in the program, I just might add, I'm sure he'll tell you, in the program, the men really have 2 goals. One goal is to get paroled, because we don't have graduation. You don't graduate from our program until you are paroled. And so when they get paroled, that's their one goal. Their second goal is to be terminated. So then they can be out, 8, 9, 10 years, 20 years, whatever years it might take to be terminated. John is an alumni. We can truly call him an alumni. Once you have finished the program and you've terminated, you're called an alumni. If you haven't been terminated yet, you're still a parolee because you're still a part of the state. Right. So you're still a pro. So the only distinction is a parolee and an alumni. John is an alumni because his parole has been terminated. I'm proud of him. John?
Thank you. I have to correct something. It's not the Dr. Regina B. Shearns Program. It's Dr. Regina B. Shearns Correctional Transition Program, and the acronym we use is CTP, but it's properly named after her. I have to add something else to here that she did not give credit for. She's not only a retired FIU professor, an adjunct professor now. She's the executive director of Alpha Phi Sigma, the Criminal Justice Honor Society that works throughout the entire United States plus a couple countries outside of it. In addition to what she did with this, which the talks about it began in 1996, has been working since. So if she won't take credit for it, I'll make sure she gets
Thank
it.
you.
And she
Thank
is
you.
lovingly known to us as Doc.
Yes.
So having said that, but my name's John Eddings. In 2005, I was blessed as a inmate to come to this institution in November of 2005, and almost to the day, 4 years later, November 10th, 2009, I was paroled. But I had a consecutive sentence in another state, so I went to California, and 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days later, I was paroled from there, and I've been out now a little over 10 years, and it was just right up under 6 years that the commission determined that I was ready to come off parole. Actually, it was January 9th, 2019. And so that's how my history became this program. But one of the things that we do have guest speakers, we do have FIU students who come in, but we have another distinction with this program that no other has it. Every man, when he's paroled from here, is not only allowed, he is encouraged to come back and work with the same men he left behind. We have a brotherhood here like none other. And the truth is, men who parole generally on a Tuesday. On Tuesday evenings, almost every week in the visiting park here, our men inside go into the visiting park, and men from the outside go back in and work with them and talk to them. So technically, if you had your ID, when you left, you can come back in the same prison on the same day that you leave that night and work with the same brothers you left behind. Now, there's strength in that, and one of the things where we get a good strength in this is because, like Eddie said, I can tell you, I figured I was one of the most prepared people ever when I walked out, and before I got up, when I got up, I realized I was lost in space. The world has changed so much, and I had tentative areas, and each man has different areas that he works with that we feels tentative about it. But what helps is when we get to go back in and share this with these same men that we were there with. And after we come back, and there's some men that came after we left. And sometimes it's men we've known for decades during our incarceration, but we get to share things with them that we learned and tell them, this is how I fixed it. This is who helped me. This is how I got past these problems. Or if I'm still having this problem, I can share that with these people. And then when their turn comes, they're better prepared because they have heard back from us. That's one of the greatest strengths about this program.
Oh, man, I love that. I know that one reason why I frequent prisons, I've even had officers ask me, why you keep coming in here? You free. But one of the reasons why is because not only do I miss that family atmosphere with the guys that I left behind, but they also fill me up when I go in. It's not necessarily me going in and, hey, I'm finna teach you something, I'm finna give you something or whatever. But when I go back in, those guys, they tell you that, hey, we're counting on you, we're proud of you. It fills my cup back up, and it makes me more excited and responsible to go out and do the right thing, because I know I got somebody counting on me that I have never had before. Somebody that's encouraging me, something I didn't have before.
You know, another thing too, that when people ask me about the same thing, because for years, I've been coming back here with it, but I've also been blessed to get my PIN number, be able to go to work with other men in other prisons. I've even gone to the women's prison a couple of times. But here's the thing. I'm a free man. I never want to spend another day in a cell. As I've learned recently, I've actually dealt with claustrophobia. I don't know if I could go back in a cell again. I'm seriously, I deal with claustrophobia. But this is my home. I left it behind, but this is my home. This is where I spent most of my life. And I belong to come back in and work with men and women like me.
One of the things that we say, because, you know, at the beginning, they are not too friendly. They were not too friendly with each other. They didn't trust each other. They didn't. So in that first class, it really took me almost a full year, full calendar year, because now we work on academic year. We do semesters, so there are 3 semesters in a year, in a calendar year. But I finally had to say to them, because they looked at one another and said, oh, his crime is worse than mine. and so forth. And I said, no, it's not. Your crime is just as bad as his. And my point is, you don't have to like him, but you will respect him.
That's right.
Because every one of us deserves respect. That means you listen to him. You don't have to agree with his opinion, but you will listen to his opinion. And so, that's one of our mottos that we work. You don't have to like me, but you will respect me. And that goes for me too. I tell them, you don't have to like me. I'm not here for you to like me, but you will respect me. And they do. And so, and now they do respect each other. They have developed a brotherhood that only they can explain to you, because I'm constantly referring to them as family, because that's what we are. We're very special. They are very special men, because the Parole Commission decided, after they reviewed their paperwork and everything else, that there's something there that is going to help them succeed in the community. So I'm going to put them into the Corrections Transition Program so they can learn more and be able to succeed outside. And we have a couple of our men that when you talk with them, they're going to tell you some of our statistics. One is responsible for the other one. And when they see one person going wrong up at Noah's house, where they go to their halfway house, I don't care if they are in for 50 years, every one of them must go to spend 1 year into a halfway house, which is another transition. So within that year, they learn to work, they learn to pay rent, they learn to buy their own clothes, they learn to, if they can save any money, maybe give it to their family. If not, they don't have a family, they are told, to open up a bank account. So they learn that transition is very important for them. Even though, you think, well, after 50 years, I have to do another year. Yeah, you do, but it's very good transition.
I have a question, Doc, and John. For the sake of our viewing audience, I want to get some clarity with a few things. One is we dealing with the correctional transition program.
Corrections.
Right, you'll hear us refer to it as CTP. This is for long-timers that's been in for 25 years or more that's facing parole. They're looking for an opportunity to get paroled, right? Just so that our audience understand that. And here with the program, they're equipped with the tools they'll need to successfully reintegrate. Can you please tell us some of the topics, some of the skills they learned that's going to help lead to their success? They've been in a long time, but what does the program specifically work with them on to give them the tools they need?
Well, that's a very good foundational question here. One of the things that I've learned, and I've studied the long-termers, I've studied and seeing what makes them so different and whatever else. And one of the things that I have found out that when they committed their crimes, the majority of them were under some kind of influence, but they also suffered from low self-esteem. And low self-esteem makes you do a lot of things that you wouldn't ordinarily do if you think enough about yourself. And so one of the things we intend to do, and we do, is like help them build their own, that they are good people down deep in their own hearts. They really want to be good men. They want to be good. But things have happened, unfortunately, in their lives, either gangs or bad neighborhoods or being orphaned or, just being thrown out in the street or we've had some of our men that from the time they were in first grade, 6, 7 years old, they were out picking cotton. Now that sounds very, an old thing for us nowadays, but it's true. They've done that. And so their self-esteem, needs to build up to let them know they are very good down deep in their hearts. They're very good, and they can be the men they want to be. They may not be the men they want to be today that they want to be, but they are better men than what they used to be. And so they will keep working on that themselves and realizing that. And by doing that, and then you begin to respect each other more and more, and you begin to realize they all have in common is that low esteem, and they all have in common the fact that they want to be paroled. And they all have in common that they want to do well in the community. They want to do well. They want to be able to pay taxes. They want to be able to have a family if they don't have one already. Many of our men have been in for so long that they don't have any families left. And so now we are their families. They don't have anyone else, but we're their family. And when they do get out, aftercare is very important to them, very important to us. It's very important, as John mentioned, for them to come back in here on a Tuesday night to say, here, I didn't forget you. I'm here. You're just like I am. You'll be out here soon dressed up in these clothes. And these men say, it's so good. I just saw you in blue last week, and here you are in the street clothes. And it means a great deal to them. It helps them with their self-esteem.
So take me a little bit deeper. So the CTP program helps them with their self-esteem, but take me a little bit deeper with the tools they actually need. Because I heard when we started, help me with the word. It wasn't prisonism, it was a word.
Prisonized.
Prisonized.
Yeah.
So how do we de-prisonize? Like, do we work on communication? Do we work on, what are these actual tools to be able to live? I've been gone 30 years. All I know is prison, right? What are we pouring into the guys for them to make it? Because I want to know, and I'm sure our listening audience, and it's millions of people that has the potential to hear this, we need to know that part.
Oh, absolutely. And we have many classes. In fact, we have, I'd say about 55 classes.
Oh, that's a lot. That's great.
Yes, and every semester, we go by semester, they are obligated to do 5 classes.
Okay.
And they must take those classes. Now, we developed those classes. I started, of course, obviously, Dean developed them. Now, any time at all that the men decide that they would like to learn something, and they can decide that they wanted to teach it, they write me a proposal. They give me their sources and where they want to go, and then ask if they could teach the course. And I, majority of times, will say yes. The other issue is it's very difficult. One of the things I've had to come to terms with, they're up here in a classroom with me, in a visiting park, and they are like the men they want to be. They're very polite. They are taught to be polite. They are taught and so forth. But they go back into a negative prison, which it's no longer ECI. ECI is now a different type of a prison, but before, they would go back into a prison where they have, 2,000 more men back there cursing, beating each other, hitting each other, and they have to fit into that environment. In order to be successful, they have to become prisonized. Now, they had to come back up to visiting park again, or for our learning center to learn, take a class. They become the men that they want to be, and then when that little hour, 2 hours, when it's up, they go back into that negative environment again. That's very difficult. It was very, very difficult for them. And I realized that, and they said, well, he's so good up here, but you should hear him back there. I said, listen, that's fine. I understand that. And if he's back there and he has to do what he has to do back there, fine. But he's up here, that means he has a couple more hours of being the man he wants to be.
Through CPT, you've been around, 26 years now?
Yes, 26.
That's a long time.
If you want to count 1976, rather 96, 76, 96, where Mrs. Villacorta were gathering. But we started our classes in January of 97.
Awesome. Still amazing work. One thing about it, programs come and programs go. So what this shows me is that there's sustainability within it. And with that sustainability, it has to be successes coming out of that. Not just a success, there's many, because that's the only way programs sustain, or else they fold them.
I'm so proud of them. I am so proud of them. When you come up and ask them, you're going to be asking, right? We have, and they'll correct me, we have over 500 of parole, something like that. Do you know how many men committed a crime?
No, I don't.
One.
One?
One man committed a crime. Not to say that we didn't have technical crimes, like no drugging and drinking and thing. That's a different story. We have a couple of them. We have I don't know, I think 7% of them. I'm not quite sure they'll give you that. One man. That's unheard of.
Offended by committing a crime.
That is absolutely
That's
not only
right.
in this state, but in this country. I think in the world, because that's why I'm so proud of them.
John, you're sitting over there. You're looking like you really have something to say. What is it?
Well, I got a couple things, but the most important thing is that first, the Dr. Regina B. Shearns is incomparable. There is no other program like it anywhere, and statistically, we can prove that the Dr. Regina B. Shearns Corrections Transition Program is the most successful program in the history of the United States of America. And that right there cannot be claimed by anyone else, and this can be backed up. Now, another thing, getting back to your questions about what we do in there, when I was there, I was able to teach victim awareness, life skills, creative writing. There's a lot of different things I was able to bring to the table. Right. And see, we all do this as a team. And see, another thing, the men coming to our program are from the old dinosaur parole system. What really didn't come out yet, see, there's 3 basic systems in the state of Florida. There's the dinosaur parole system. Then in 1983, the law got changed. There was only 2 sentences left that came under the old parole system. Everything else was either 65% or till death do you part. Then in 1995, that system was replaced with the current one where you do 85% of your number or till death do you part. Well, we're part of the old dinosaur things. Now, that incentive that we can go home, in fact, we're known as men going home. We know that all we have to do is stay alive, stay out of trouble, and stay productive, and one day we will go home because the commission chose to send us there with that thing. So with that incentive there, with all things that we get, the brotherhood, and we're taught these things. We take on, every man has responsibility. So when you combine all these things, every man has some responsibility besides going to a class. And, one of the things that a man taught me years ago, if you do the same thing an hour a day for 5 years, in 5 years, you're going to be an expert. So as we apply what we get here on a regular basis, and all of us stay here a good time, we become part of it, and it becomes a part of our system. I know I get a little long-winded, but I want to understand why this is important, how it works.
This has been the Death to Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. We're here with Dr. Shearns and also Mr. Eddings. We were talking about the incentive program here at Everglades Correctional Institution, and also the CTP program, the Correctional Transitional Program. This has been the Death to Prison podcast, where we say, choose life.
I can change the world. Feed one, teach one boy and girl. Maybe we can change the